stars go straight to the top story this evening. Amidst a rift between the government and the Reserve Bank of India on several issues, the central bank governor Urjit Patel has resigned with immediate effect. This comes just days ahead of a crucial RBI board meeting that was meant to discuss progress on issues raised by the board's government nominees last month. In a statement, Urjit Patel cited personal reasons for his resignation. He went on to say, and I quote, that it has been my privilege and honour to serve in the Reserve Bank of India in various capacities over the years. Patel's resignation makes him the first governor since 1992 to leave in just 2 years. His 3-year term was supposed to end in September 2019, and more importantly, he is the first in the recent past to tender his resignation. Prime Minister Modi called Patel a thorough professional with impeccable integrity who leaves behind a great legacy. Finance Minister Jaitley said it was a pleasure to deal with Urjit Patel and benefit from his scholarship. What's interesting, though, is that Governor Patel's statement makes no mention of the government or any individuals within the government. Either he does, of course, thank the Reserve Bank and his colleagues at the Reserve Bank of India. Well, we've been speaking with a whole host of commentators for reactions. Former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh spoke to CNBC TV 18's Parikshit Luthra. He said that as a long-term friend and admirer of Patel, he was sad at the development. We reached out to former RBI Governor C. Rangarajan and Raghuram Rajan as well. Rangarajan said he was shocked and surprised by the resignation. Raghuram Rajan added that the governor's resignation is a statement of dissent. We spoke with two former finance ministers, P. Chidambaram and Yashwant Sinha. Chidambaram believes Patel's resignation leaves the RBI's reputation in tatters. Sinha, meanwhile, said that Urjit Patel's resignation is a clear sign of the government trying to interfere with the workings of the Reserve Bank of India. Those are reactions coming into this big development, which is not entirely unexpected. The timing has taken people by surprise. We've also been speaking with market experts, and most market experts believe that the markets will react more to what the state election verdict is. While this will, of course, be a factor that will weigh on sentiment, they will react more to what the verdict is. If it is in favour of the ruling dispensation, which is the BJP, then perhaps the negative impact of this development could be negated somewhat. But all of that is up for speculation. Remember, this news broke after the markets had closed for the day. What we are seeing, though, is the SGX Nifty trading with cuts, and the impact is also being seen in the rupee forward market. But listen in to the reactions that have come in.
The government deeply acknowledges the great services that he has rendered to India, its economy, in several capacities, more particularly as the Governor of the Reserve Bank and the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank. My own experience in dealing with Dr. Patel was indeed a very delightful one, because I interacted with him very frequently and benefited greatly from his scholarship. The Reserve Bank is a very important institution in the economic management of this country. Its professional judgment is of immense importance to us. The government and the RBI regularly consult in order to steer the national economy. And I'm sure we'll all remember the services that Dr. Patel has given to this country. I wish him all the very best.
Well, I don't know why he has done it, but as a long-term friend and admirer of Urjit, I feel very sad at this development.
Dr. C. Rangarajan, former Reserve Bank of India Governor, a doyen of the Indian financial sector, joining us. Dr. Rangarajan, this is shocking news. Governor Patel resigns and cites personal reasons. Can they be anything? Can they be personal at all, sir?
I'm indeed very surprised to hear this. I thought that the last board meeting resolved most of the issues. Therefore, I do not know what fresh issues have risen after that. But I am certainly surprised and deeply shocked in some ways.
Okay. Would this in some way affect the image of the Reserve Bank? I mean, the last we remember is the hoary past when India was not all that globalized or even marketized. Benegal Ramarao resigning, and I think H.P.R. Iyengar also resigning, right? But those were times when we were not all that globalized. Now we are a big, deep market and a globalized economy. Will this mean international investors will worry?
No, I think there was another case. Mr. Malhotra also resigned.
Oh, yes, Malhotra, sorry.
So, anyway, I think the resignation by the governor has its implications. I do hope the government comes out with some clarificatory statement so that we understand why and what happened. But all that I can say at this point is that I'm deeply surprised.
Okay, sir, actually the letter says that on account of personal reasons, I have decided to step down from my current position effective immediately. Now, when Viral Acharya made that speech, which appears to have started off a string of reactions, he clearly said that he thanks the governor for suggesting this topic. So it looks like it was a jointly written speech. Would you say under the circumstances that the deputy governor also may leave, in which case the vacuum in the top will be really serious?
Well, we do not know the circumstances and so on. So let's wait. Because there can be no vacancy as far as the governorship is concerned. Therefore, if the resignation is accepted, then there has to be immediately another appointment.
Okay, so normally the deputy governor would take over, isn't it? And the deputy governor in charge of monetary policy.
No, the appointment has to be made by the government.
Okay.
So in the last case, when Malhotra resigned, the new governor came.
Oh.
So therefore they have to make up their minds. I just don't know anything.
Yeah.
I am not privy to anything.
I do think this is a serious issue. It needs to be dealt with carefully. The government has to ask what led to this resignation. Resignations are not frequent at the RBI. This is probably only the second resignation in its history, maybe the first explicit resignation. And therefore, we have to look at the circumstances that led to it. It's a statement of dissent. And therefore, the government has to be very careful in dealing with it such that the autonomy of the institution as well as its credibility is preserved.
But Dr. Rajan, you say it's a statement of dissent, but the governor's own statement says nothing of the sort. It says, I'm resigning due to personal reasons. If you believe that this is in fact a statement of dissent, would it not have been then accurate for the outgoing governor to have said so?
No, I think you have to, in all these cases, read between the lines. It may well be that health is involved, but I think we also have to look at the circumstances in which this decision is made and ask what prompted it. So I think it's useful to go over the kind of dialogue that's taken place over the last few weeks and ask if there's anything that could have prompted such a statement.
Dr. Rajan, will it be very difficult to, get credibility for the predecessor, for the successor, because it may be seen as the government has picked someone who is willing to toe the line?
No, I think you're prejudging a lot of events. We don't have a new appointment yet. We have to see what the government does, both on the current set of controversies between the Reserve Bank and the government, but also in terms of the process of appointing the new governor and who the new governor might be. It's a long way there. I think we shouldn't prejudge what might happen, but I think it's extremely important at this point for the government to take due note of what has happened, take it very seriously, and act appropriately to preserve the credibility of the institution.
So what do you think could have been the proximate reason? Is it that Section 7 was threatened to be used? The events that have led to this, to the resignation. Is it the political appointments to the board? Is it the empowering the board to such an extent that the Reserve Bank is being made to toe the line? What do you think, as a person who knows the institution, which comes as a shock to you? Which do you think was the wrong way to go?
I don't want to speculate. All I will say is that the act of resignation is really the ultimate weapon in a government appointee's sort of portfolio, and they exercise it. They don't exercise it lightly, and so to that extent, we must look at this decision and understand why Dr. Patel, who was appointed by this government, essentially exercised that particular option. Now, as you said earlier, it may well be because of health reasons, but something coming at this juncture, given that Dr. Patel was hale and hearty at the monetary policy conference a few days ago, would suggest there is more to it than just the statement. And I think the government is well advised to look at the details and understand why it happened and act appropriately.
Okay. Can the RBI be managed for some time with the deputy governors, or do you think it is extremely important to find a replacement very quickly?
No, I think there have been circumstances in the past where interim sort of people have held the position, and I don't think that it's something that needs to be done tomorrow. I think the government has to be deliberate about this because it involves the credibility of India's one of India's most important institutions. So treading carefully is extremely important.
Do you think the next best thing the government should do is to get another governor immediately? What should be on the government's priority list now?
I've said that it can take its time. The main issue is to go carefully and deliberately over what has happened and figure out how to ensure the credibility of the institution going forward. So I think those are all matters that the government can and should and will hopefully pay attention to.
We've got Mr. Yashwant Sinha joining us, the former finance minister. Mr. Sinha, this was being speculated and now it is official. Urjit Patel has tendered in his resignation. He says on account of personal reasons. Your first comment, sir?
My first comment is one of shock, because in the meanwhile, after the last board meeting of the RBI, it was being pointed out that everything was hunky-dory, that all the issues had been resolved. So quite clearly, the resignation of Urjit Patel shows that nothing had changed and that things were quite as bad as they were before. And his resignation is a clear sign of the government trying to interfere with the working of the RBI. They're trying to destroy the autonomous character of the bank that is its due. And I personally feel that after the resignation of Urjit Patel, there is no reason for the finance minister to continue in his post. He should also tender his resignation.
Oh, Mr. Sinha, that would be very difficult.
Well, so far,
very difficult for the country, don't you think so?
And so far, Mr. Sinha, there has been no reaction from North Bloc just yet. But Mr. Sinha, how is this going to go down with, for instance, the IMF? And I ask you specifically about the IMF, sir, because the IMF had actually commented on the spat between the government and the Reserve Bank of India, and had also cautioned that the autonomy of the Reserve Bank of India was something to be protected. From an international perspective, from organizations like the World Bank, the IMF, foreign investors, how do you believe this will be read?
Not only by the IMF, but as you said, the foreign investors will read it very badly. They will be more convinced than ever before that everything is not all right with our system, that it is not merely the issue of one individual, it is the collapse of a system. And this is not going to augur well for the investors who would be thinking of coming to India
and making investments here.
Mr. Chidambaram, many thanks for joining us here. It's not an entirely unexpected development, but certainly a surprising development given this timing, sir. Urjit Patel tendering in his resignation. Your comments?
Well, I'm not surprised at all. According to me, he should have resigned on November 19, which I said was a day of reckoning. I think they partially humiliated him on that day. He may have thought that the government will retrace its steps. I knew it would not. And why go to another humiliating meeting next week? So I think his resignation is good for him. According to me, no self-respecting scholar or academic can work in this government.
But where does that leave the institution, sir? You're saying it may be good for him because you believe that no self-respecting individual should be in this position. But where does that then leave the institution? Where does it leave the economy?
It leaves it in tatters. When government forced the RBI to concur in demonetization, the reputation of RBI was substantially ruined. It hasn't gained it anywhere in the world. In Basel, they look upon the RBI as some kind of a government-controlled central bank. I think we'll have to wait for another government, the next government, whoever it may be, to rebuild RBI, as the next government has to rebuild many other institutions which have been either captured or destroyed.
But speaking of the uncertainty now on account of this resignation, which is effective immediately, Mr. Chidambaram, what is the process? The senior-most deputy governor takes over in the interim till the government appoints a replacement for Urjit Patel?
Well, government can appoint a quack as RBI governor. I'm told that Dr. Viral Acharya is also perhaps contemplating resignation.
Well, that the Reserve Bank spokesperson has clarified to us that Viral Acharya has not tendered in his resignation. That's the clarification that's come in to us from the Reserve Bank of India, sir.
Well, I don't know. Anyway.
What would your concern... Yeah, just one quick question, sir. What do you believe is going to be the matter of most concern at this point in time, given the fact that there are several pending issues that were to be taken up at the next board meeting, one related to the issue of governance?
We can't discuss.
Yeah, do you believe that those issues... but do you believe that those issues are now likely to be pushed?
This is not the time to discuss those issues. What can they push when there is no RBI governor?
Mr. Moily, appreciate you joining us, sir. Till the time that we have a replacement in place, sir, this is obviously going to be uncertain times for the financial markets, wouldn't you say?
This is another assault, made by the NDA government, led by Sri Narendra Modi, to demolish the institutions and also to frequently interfere and put pressure on the independence and autonomy of the institutions like RBI. They have done it for the CBI. They have demolished the Planning Commission, and even the UGC as is being demolished, and even the Supreme Court, they wanted to interfere. There was a revolt within the Supreme Court corridors. So I think this will augur very bad for the economy, disastrous to the economy of the country. Economy of the country is already disrupted. With this, of course, he will not say anything because, Urjit Patel is a gentleman. As a gentleman, they don't want any gentleman in any important position.
No, but Mr. Moily, as the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, Parliament session opens tomorrow. Is this going to be a matter that will be taken up by your party, by the opposition, sir?
This is a matter of grave concern to the economy of the country. Naturally, the opposition or anybody who is concerned with the economy of the country and also the sustenance of the economy of the country, one has to raise this issue.
You've had several conversations with the governor, sir, as part of the Parliamentary Committee on Finance. You've quizzed him on issues like demonetization, etc. Was there any indication that you got?
No. This is not correct to say that we have quizzed him. and in fact he is an eminent, outstanding economist of the country and an outstanding banker of this country, and there is no question of quizzing him. But in fact, we could feel the pressure on him from the government.
When you say that you could feel the pressure, Mr. Moily, what do you mean? Did the governor suggest anything to indicate that he was being put under pressure?
From his body language and also from the what he spoke, we could feel the pressure or the tension which is created by this government.
But what were,
particularly
Mr. Moily, what were the specific issues, sir? What were the specific issues where you felt or got an indication from the governor that he was under pressure?
He was very frankly talking to us. We talked to him only 10 or 15 days back. And we could feel that, the man is on pressure and, in fact, pressure from the government.
No, but Mr. Moily, I want to come back again to this. You're saying that you had a conversation, as the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance, you had a conversation with RBI Governor Urjit Patel. I'm using your words, sir. You said that you felt his body language and the words he used suggested that he was under pressure, that there was tension. What were the specific issues that he raised, sir, in that meeting with the Parliamentary Standing Committee that gave you that impression?
Every word he spoke, every sentence he uttered, and the evidence which he has rendered to us, to the committee, finance committee, it was very clear that he will not be allowed to continue by this government for even for a couple of days.
It would certainly indicate to a lot of people that the autonomy of the Reserve Bank is at risk at the moment.
What do you think would have precipitated it? Is it the threat of Section 7? Is it the threat that the board will oversee every action of the Reserve Bank?
I don't think it could be any one single factor. It's a combination of what perhaps has been going on for a long time. And maybe I think one of the factors which could be affecting this is the fear that even the board is no longer independent and it is becoming an extension of the government. And therefore the governor may be feeling that his ability to function is to some extent being restricted.
As someone who spent 21 years of your career being a part of the RBI's board, sir, what does this event today mean for the Reserve Bank of India?
Well, I think the first point is that industry and everyone else will feel that there's a fair amount of uncertainty about the future, and that is very bad for the economy and for business. And also, in a sense, the RBI is only one of the regulators. And if one regulator feels that its autonomy is affected, it could affect the conduct of so many other regulators also.
In this situation, foreign investors will be the least of my worries.
Okay.
I'm generally concerned about the country as a whole, the reputation of the Reserve Bank, both domestically and, of course, internationally. I do hope that the idea that Reserve Bank and the central bank is separate from the government should be managed much better, in that the central bank of any country is, in the ultimate sense, very much part of the government as a whole. And there really needs to be a much better, more cooperative relationship with due respect on both sides. And there really should not be two sides, because it is the economy of the country that's at stake, and it is absolutely necessary to have stable management.
Devin Choksi of KR Choksi and Sanjay Dutt of Quantum Securities with us. Sanjay, let me come to you first. We had you this morning and you were talking about the implications of the election result and which way the market would read that. And now you have two triggers to deal with, the election results and Urjit Patel's resignation. What will the market make of this?
Oh, few I would like to start, Shahid. What a day. We've had so much being thrown at us, and I think more tomorrow morning. Coming back to your question, I think markets obviously are taking it negatively and should take it negatively also. But moving on from that, I think markets are now looking at the fact that who's going to be the replacement. if we have, a good replacement in place, someone that would calm down everyone, ideal candidate being someone like SANJAY, who's comfortable with the government, has been in there, and now the fact that we have a CEA in place, I think markets would take that very positively. The governor's resign is unfortunate, but I think that story is over, it's history. So markets now looking ahead as to what happens tomorrow, who's the next person going to come in. That has to be a quick announcement and the right candidate.
Okay, quick announcement and the right candidate. Devin also with us. Devin, would you concur with what you just heard there from Sanjay? And I'm again pointing out that what we have so far is the exit poll result. If the actual result were to mirror what the exit polls were saying, add to that what we've seen happen overnight, which is Governor Patel's resignation, and of course global cues not looking great. I mean, it's a heady mix for our markets when we open.
Yeah, Shirin, I think we will have a challenge to meet, because I think on one side the currency has fallen. On the other side, I think the crude oil and the commodity-related losses that the global traders have been incurring, which is forcing them to take the money out of different asset classes, including emerging market asset class in India included. So obviously the pressure is building onto our market, and on the top of it, I think the negative news stroke, I think election results, I think all of them are coming together. I guess too many things are coming together at the same time. And that could possibly, I think, ask people to stay away from the market, I think, for tomorrow, I guess.
I think the pressures are not kind of unexpected. The job is such. So one does feel a little sad about it. But the important thing is how quickly, a replacement is found and, who that person is and what he comes with. So one has to move on in that sense. And he has said resign for personal reasons. I had heard that, there were reasons, but there is no time to get into it because we will be what we want to believe in a situation like this. So I think to me, the work that he did on fixing bank management, the stand he took on was bank management was unprecedented, I think, and it was a major contribution to central banking in our country.
More than the short-term reaction, look, this is clearly a shock. And in fact, I'm sitting in Hong Kong right now as we speak. There are investors who have over $50 billion of investments in debt and over $400 billion of investments in equity. They're watching us extremely closely. Whatever be the actual truth, the benefit of doubt lies with the RBI. People will say that RBI is a credible institution and this looks like the government has pushed the RBI into a corner, and they're watching extremely closely. Short-term reaction apart, what really matters right now is whom does the government appoint as the replacement governor, and what do they do in respect of all the contentious issues which seem to have led to the resignation of Dr. Patel.
Who's going to replace him is a very important consideration for the markets and for the economy. And we'll have to wait and see because this thing has been a sudden, and I presume it's also a sudden resignation for the government. I've been very critical of the policies of the RBI in terms of very high real interest rates. So I'm just hoping that whoever the new governor is doesn't have the same view on interest rates as Urjit Patel had.
We must not interpret this only as an attack on the independence of the RBI. It could be a case of, certain less than optimal policies and an inability for dialogue and adjustment, which is required.
No, just one second, Ashima. From what I heard from you, you seem to suggest that perhaps the government is well within its right to ask the RBI to make changes to policy. So do you believe that this was in fact the government asking Governor Patel to go?
No, I don't think it was the government asking him to go necessarily. I don't know. We don't know what happened. But I think it's a question of, people taking very rigid positions and not being able to find a compromise.
In a major victory for the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate, the UK's Westminster Court ordered the extradition of Vijay Mallya. Now, both sides have 14 days to file an appeal. Mallya is in fact wanted in India for defaulting on loans to the tune of 9,000 crore rupees. The investigative agencies have also accused him of siphoning off loan proceeds. Sanjay Suri is here with the exact details. Sanjay, take us through the developments today.
Well, there hasn't been any. Theoretically there has been one, but this person agreed to go back, so this was not a contested extradition. There has been no extradition. You have to say that in the case of Ravi Shankaran, in the War League's case, there was an order from this court to extradite. He went in appeal and won. And so the Indian government eventually lost out on that case, and Ravi Shankaran managed to hold his ground. But this is the most likely case we have seen, and I've seen quite a few going back to the case of Nadeem and then Iqbal Mirchi and whatnot, where extradition moves have been made and have gone nowhere. And this was the one case that the Indian government fought most strenuously and most assiduously, because a lot of homework was done down to the detail. Barring the arguments on merit, there was always that issue that has been a hurdle before about detention conditions. That was addressed. Video evidence was presented to the court. So the Indian government really has done all it could, and successfully.
I have already filed a comprehensive settlement application in the Karnataka High Court, who has kindly agreed to consider the settlement application. And as I said before to you, I put my assets on the table, asked the court to decide on a settlement, pay off employees and creditors. We have applied to the court on 2 different occasions in the last 2 years, specifically asking court's permission to use monies deposited with the courts to pay employees. We did not get the permission, but anyway, it also forms part of our settlement offer now.
The campaign was, why are you not being able to get him back? Well, you were the culprits in giving the loans. You created a system where people like this could prosper. And we have succeeded now in getting him back. It's a proud moment for India.
Well, Shireen Bhan caught up with former Solicitor General Mohan Parasaran and started by asking him for his first reaction on the Mallya verdict. Here's an excerpt of that interview.
This decision appears to be quite justified in law, because he owed huge sums and went out of the country quite stealthily and was coming out with all sorts of arguments. He is a rank 1 economic offender. There has been gross violations of the Income Tax Act and other acts as well, FEMA, etc. And the court this time was quite justified. It can't again be going by the very same logic about the conditions in Bihar, etc. And I think the court was quite justified in this case, ordering extradition.
Okay, Mr. Parasaran, now the case just goes to a superior court. How long would it be before Mr. Mallya would be actually extradited?
Now I think he would get an automatic stay. That's what I was told. So far as the superior court is concerned, he will get an automatic stay. And this process may take about 2 to 3 months before the superior court.
Okay. So if the superior court were to decide like the lower court, the earliest Mr. Mallya can be extradited would be what, April or March?
Yeah, I think so. The chances of further filing an appeal to the High Court of England, to the Supreme Court of England, I think is very remote. Unlike, I think, our court, I think the Supreme Court of England interferes only in the rarest of rare cases where there is a grave question of law. No?
So you're saying that that you believe that the higher court is also likely to rule similarly, but is there a role at all for the government to play in this? And I'm talking about the UK government, because we are given to understand that the extradition order will now be sent to the UK Home Secretary. So is there a role at all that the UK government plays in this in the proceedings?
Conventionally they have approved it, unless and until I think it is a case where I think the country to which a person is to be extradited is a country where there they don't follow any principles of human rights, no? Or it is actually an enemy country of England.
Well, the Vijay Mallya extradition verdict could dominate the discourse during the winter session of the Parliament, which begins tomorrow. Now, this will be the last full-fledged session before the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. Ahead of the winter session, an all-party meeting was organised in Delhi today. Attending that meeting, PM Modi asked lawmakers to utilise the session well. Parishit Luthra joins in now with more details. Parishit, what can we expect tomorrow?
The Prime Minister has appealed to all political parties to create a constructive atmosphere for the working of the House. 45 bills are listed in this session, the winter session of Parliament. This includes the Triple Talaq Bill, the Indian Medical Council Amendment Bill, Consumer Protection Bill, Juvenile Justice Bill, Trafficking of Persons Bill as well. The government has sent out a message that it's ready for a discussion and debate on any issue, but the opposition should cooperate and should allow the House to function smoothly. Simultaneously, Venkaiah Naidu, the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha, also held a meeting of members of Parliament of the Rajya Sabha and sent the same message that it's very important for the House to function smoothly and debate issues of national importance. Simultaneously, the opposition held its own meeting. They decided to corner the government on the issue of farmers' distress, on the issue of economy, foreign policy, internal security, and also for undermining institutions like the RBI, CBI, CVC, the CVDT, and the Enforcement Directorate.
Okay, Barisha, thanks for taking us through that. But let's get you the big international story of the day. British Prime Minister has delayed a Parliament vote on a deal for the UK to leave the European Union. Speaking in the Parliament, May added that the deal in its current form does not have enough support from MPs. Equities across the world are under pressure as the uncertainty over Brexit continues. The British pound plummeted to its lowest level in 18 months. Even on Wall Street, losses accelerated soon after Theresa May's statement, where she also warned against a second Brexit referendum. Now let's get you the big corporate story of the day. Kotak Mahindra Bank moved the Bombay High Court against the RBI's decision to prohibit the bank from reducing its promoter holding via perpetual non-convertible preference shares. The shares of the bank tumbled in trade today after the bank filed this writ petition. Ritu Singh is here to put some more perspective into this. Ritu, firstly, take us to Kotak's petition and what is the way forward now?
Well, Kotak Mahindra Bank has moved the Bombay High Court to validate its position really with respect to the issuance of preferential shares to meet RBI promoter holding norms. And given that the deadline to meet RBI norms was coming to an end on the 31st of December, the bank said that it had to file this writ petition to protect its interest and as a matter of abundant caution. Now remember, as per RBI norms, Uday Kotak is required to bring down his promoter stake to 20% from the 30% held currently by 31st December 2018 and thereafter to 15% by March 2020. In August, Kotak had proposed to reduce his promoter holding in the bank using the preferential share route rather than bringing down his share of common equity. But as you pointed out, RBI had then rejected this method, saying the route to dilute promoter shareholding was not acceptable. Now, the bank has said that it had once again explained this position to the RBI and shared with them the opinions of the senior-most legal counsels of the country, which confirmed the bank's understanding, but there has been no response from the regulator and therefore the bank said it was left with no option but to take RBI to court. Now the argument we understand that Kotak is believed to have raised is that RBI circulars on private bank ownership refer to paid-up capital up until 2016 and even the Jan 2001 guidelines under which Kotak was given a license talks about paid-up capital. So he is well within the law to use preferential shares to meet these RBI norms. Remember, it was only in August 2016 when the rules for on-tap licensing for universal banks were given out that voting equity capital was brought up. Now, experts we spoke to said that it could take several weeks or perhaps even months before the courts rule in this matter. But in the meantime, perhaps this could buy Kotak more time, whatever the outcome.
Okay, so Monday is the next hearing for this. We'll, of course, have our reporters tracking this very closely. Thanks, Ritu, for taking us through that. But let's move on to the big story from the insurance space. In a bid to make the National Pension Scheme more lucrative, the Cabinet today cleared 5 changes. The government contribution has been hiked and 60% of the withdrawals will be tax-free now against the earlier limit of 40%. What exactly does that mean and how does it change our lives? Yashen is here to explain just that. Yash, take us through the key changes.
So, Kritika, just to start with some very, very important and, just some pending changes as far as, the National Pension Scheme is concerned on some very crucial aspects around this scheme. Of course, this is one of the three long-term pension product scheme which runs in the country. To start with, on the aspect of taxation, the amendments there, essentially Cabinet today has given the status of EEE or exempt status when it comes to National Pension Scheme. Now, what does this mean? Essentially, now all three aspects, which is your contribution towards National Pension Scheme, the accumulation, which is the corpus, as well as the withdrawal, will become tax exempt. This versus the current mechanism, where of course your contribution and accumulation is tax exempt, but when it comes to withdrawal, 40% is tax exempt, 40% gets converted into annuity, but the 20%, the balance 20% element of it gets taxed. Now, of course, with this amendment, all three aspects, your contribution, your accumulation, as well as your withdrawal, will be tax exempt. Second aspect will be the contribution. As far as, it's the scheme as a whole is voluntary for private employees and compulsory for government employees, where 10% of their basic salary plus dearness allowance is contributed towards NPS. Now, that limit has been raised to 14% just with the whole logic of having a stronger retirement corpus for all these government employees. The third one is the investment part. Private employees do get the benefit of choosing the breakup between debt to equity investment out of their NPS contribution. Government employees don't get that particular provision, but now government will give these employees also the provision to select their debt to equity breakup out of their NPS investments for themselves. So that is one important point. The last 2 points, there will be an interest which will be paid as far as delayed payouts out of NPS are concerned, and of course as far as income tax deduction are concerned, the deduction of ATC for an amount of 1.5 lakh has also been allotted when it comes to the National Pension Scheme.
एक दूसरा महत्वपूर्ण चेंज जो हुआ है कि रिटायरमेंट पे एग्जिट के टाइम पे 60 वो निकालते थे और 40 उसकी एन्युटी में जाता था, आई स्टैंड करेक्टेड। उस 60 में से 40 टैक्स फ्री था और 20 टैक्सेबल था। तो दूसरा बड़ा चेंज ये हुआ है कि इस 60 के 60 को टैक्स एग्जेम्प्टेड कर दिया गया है।
All right, let's move on to another big corporate story. Jet Airways stock was under pressure once again in trade. The cash-strapped airline is in talks with its foreign partner Etihad and the Tata Group, hoping to secure some immediate fund infusion. Now, there were reports that Yusuf Ali, the chairman of Abu Dhabi-based Lulu Group, could be interested in Jet Airways. But speaking to CNBC TV 18, Yusuf Ali made it very clear that he has no interest in Jet Airways and pointed out that the airline has access to funds via Etihad.
We have been hearing about you taking a role in investing in an Indian carrier, that is Jet Airways. Can you just comment on that?
At this juncture, we didn't decide to invest in any airlines in India.
Right.
Because I think that civil aviation industry or the aviation industry is not my core business.
Right.
I will invest and concentrate in my core business, shopping malls and hypermarkets and other hospitality sector.
So has Jet Airways reached to you at least to use your access to and your proximity to the UAE family?
No, because Jet Airways has got their own accessibility with the Etihad and other people.
Right.
Okay, so the question still arises, who exactly is Etihad talking to bring on as a local partner? Moving on to an exclusive. After the food regulator recently asked food delivery platforms to delist illegal food operators, we learned that the Ministry of Tourism is all set to ask online travel aggregators like Make My Trip, Booking.com to conduct internal audits and delist unlicensed properties. Priya Sheth has the exact details. Priya, there have been a couple of concerns raised by hotel associations over the weekend. What are the aspects that the Ministry of Tourism is looking into?
Well, there has been an ongoing tiff between hotel associations as well as online travel aggregators. In fact, the Ministry of Tourism has recognized these set of issues and has formulated new guidelines with regards to online travel aggregators. Now, these new guidelines will give recognition or accreditation to several of these online travel portals. Now, what we do understand is that the Ministry of Tourism is all set to ask these online travel portals to delist unlicensed players that have been listed on these platforms. Now, this delisting process will also speed up the recognition or the accreditation process that will follow through by the Ministry of Tourism. Now, the Federation of Hotels and Restaurants Association of India claims that 40% of the room inventory lying with several of these online travel portals is unlicensed, and therefore this exercise also serves to weed out several of these unlicensed players. Now, the Incredible India recognition that the Ministry of Tourism will provide several of these travel operators will actually give them a status as far as Indian standards are concerned. Now, another issue that the hotel associations had pointed out was the commission structure, which stands at 20 to 40% per booking as of now. What we do understand is that the Ministry of Tourism has said that they would not want to intervene as far as the commission rates are concerned, because that would be recognized by market forces. So this is a space that we will continue to watch as to how this shapes up going ahead.
To revisit the top story of the day, RBI Governor Urjit Patel has resigned, citing personal reasons. Let's go across to Lata Venkatesh on what's her take on Urjit Patel's term and resignation. Lata, over to you.
It's too early to make a judgment on Governor Patel's career, but clearly he was a victim of circumstances and events which probably previous governors never faced. The first one, of course, was demonetization. It was baptism by fire. And it's quite likely that Governor Patel was not comfortable with the decision but played along and faced some ridicule thereafter. The second decision, again, the second event, again not of his making, was the PNB fraud, on which the government, for which the government blamed the Reserve Bank, at least partly. And then finally the ILNFS NPA status, again, which is blamed on Reserve Bank for not regulating enough. The ILNFS is a very old institution and cannot be, and the blame cannot fall only on one governor. But nevertheless, these were three major events of which Governor Patel's reputation, fell a victim to. The causes of the rift between him and the government perhaps should be traced to the February 12th circular. There may have been other misunderstanding, differences of opinion, but the February 12th circular clearly raised a lot of opposition in the government because a lot of assets were going under the hammer, and the government perhaps felt miffed for not being consulted. The Reserve Bank's position probably was that if consulted, it would have been shot down even before the ink dried. Secondly, RBI's capital, and this goes back even before the February 12th circular. Perhaps hints were always there that the RBI should surrender part of its capital, and the noise only grew louder as the GST revenues refused to come. And then, of course, there were more recent things like after the debt crisis hit, that more banks should be pulled out of the PCA, and RBI was being way too strict on Basel capital norms. The immediate cause of the resignation most likely is the board governance argument that the board will minutely look at everything that the Reserve Bank does and take a call on it, and the RBI shall abide by it. That perhaps was the reason why the governor decided to call it quits. Not under my surveillance, not under my stewardship shall this happen. Maybe Governor Patel's decision. Also, it's possible that he was under pressure to give a line of credit to NBFC, something that he's not willing to. Now, the market, of course, moves on, the economy moves on and looks at the next likely incumbent. And the buzz doing the rounds is that there are two or three names. The DEA Secretary, Subhash Garg himself, the former DEA Secretary Shakti Kanta is a potential appointee to candidate for this position, and another person whose name is doing the rounds is the SEBI chief, Mr. Tyagi. But we will have to really wait and see. All this is pure buzz and really not backed by any confirmation.